Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on a reel that Ron sent in. Ron is down in Florida, does a lot of trolling, has a kind of an interesting collection of fishing reels. Most of them are the older Finor reels, but he sent up a Penn Senator 113H. The 113H is the 4.0 size Senator. He tells me it's kind of been slipping. Needs to see if we can't replace the drag washers in it, service the reel. So I've done services on several of these reels on videos. So we'll call this one how to replace the drag washers on it. Although it really is a full service of the reel because, well, you need to take everything apart to get to those drag washers. So let's get started. I removed the set screw that holds your handle screw on. And I used my wrench to loosen that handle screw, and now we'll pick it up in real time. And we start by removing the handle, the star adjuster, the shim washer, which goes under there, a tension washer. And this reel is very clean. Everything I get from Ron is in nice, clean condition. That's always important. If you keep your reels clean, you don't have to worry about the dirt and debris of the fishing environment getting inside of it and ruining it. That's real easy to do when you have micro sands and micro salts. So you should do as Ron has done here and flush those reels after use. And I've had a lot of folks telling me different ways that they do it. Some use a WD-40 kind of a thing. Others just keep a spray bottle on board of fresh water. And well, as soon as they reach back on the dock, they spray it down good with the fresh water and then rinse it thoroughly a little bit later. But the idea is to get that salt and sand out of the reel and keep that reel debris free, and you're going to be in good condition between services. Well, if you like these kinds of videos, if you like to learn how to take reels apart, how to service them, how to keep them fishing for a long time to come, maybe you're even considering opening up a reel service business. Maybe you own a reel service business and you just want to learn about other types of fishing reels, maybe the ones that you don't see come across your shop every day. Well, then I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. If you do subscribe to the channel, please just hit that notification button. And well, when you hit that notification button, make sure that you watch the videos that you want to watch and that you like those videos if you do. That helps the ranking of the channel and helps you to learn more as well. Well, we're taking these off, and one of the things that just came to my mind was a note I saw comparing the US-made Senators with the newer Senators, the H2s, that are made in China. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, among other things, is that the US-made Senators have 7 side plate screws, and the H2s have 5. So there's really only 3 screws on this reel, on the newer version of this reel, that's holding the side plate to the frames. So just be aware of that. It's, well, makes you think that, well, under stress, maybe 3 is not as good as 5. I don't know. There was a reason for them changing it, and hopefully the reason that they changed the number of screws wasn't just economic, that it saved you 20 cents a reel for the screws or whatever they are. So I don't know, but I did find that kind of unusual. I have seen differences in the reels made in China versus the ones made in the US, and they have been about materials, thinner springs or things like that, different metallurgy, you know. But this one I kind of thought was interesting. We've removed the screws because you have to take this side plate off in order to get to the drag washers to replace those. All right, let's remove that. You can see that the reel is clean, but it needs a servicing. And again, because the drag washers are embedded in the main gear, you do need to service the entire side plate. So take this as a lesson in how to service the reel as well. And well, we're going to spend just a second here doing that. There's nothing much other than a brief cleaning on the inside here. And this is what you can't reach when you've got a little spray bottle or when you're generally cleaning, because it's being hidden by the spool. So let's take the advantage of having that spool out of here. Use a little bit of rod and reel cleaner or some other cleaner, whatever your preference is, but this is a Penn rod and reel cleaner. It does a great job. I like it. I use it all the time. I'm one of those folks that, well, when I repair the reel, I also want to clean the reel. There's a lot of folks out there that will just say, okay, the repair of the reel is all I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to do the full service. It's got a broken spring. Funny I mentioned broken spring. We have a spring here that's not connected. Go figure, right? So it's those kinds of things. They would just jump in, fix the spring, and run on to do something else. I believe that as long as you have the reel together and it doesn't take that much more effort to do the rest of it, let's do the rest of it. Okay, let's wind this up here. I'm going to put a rubber band on this just because it's an easier way to hold this down. Apparently that's some kind of a metal tie or something. Check the back, make sure that's clean. Check the front, make sure it's clean. It's not. There's a buildup here of some old dried grease, so we'll take care of that right now. I'm using a penetrating oil to dissolve the grease. I'm using a cotton paper towel to wipe it up. There we go, nice and shiny. We've oiled the bearing in the back. I oil the bearings. Now people ask me, why do I oil the bearings, not grease them? Well, it's a simple and direct answer to that. If you grease bearings, it slows the bearing down. Oil is more slippery, and when you're drop fishing or reeling, the oil is going to keep that bearing looser and run faster than grease will. Also, grease contains contaminants or accumulates contaminants, and it holds it, becomes abrasive. So that's why I do it, and we're going to show you all kinds of things. In order to service the drag washers, again, we have to remove all of the pieces. In this case, because we have a spring that's not properly loaded, we're going to have to go and do that piece as well. To get to that, you need to remove the inner trim ring on this reel. Well, we need to do two things here because of that spring that's at a little bit of a problem. We need to remove the lever for the free spool. And that tool usually works, but I guess because of the size of this reel, probably have to move up. I'm thinking maybe that's a 10 millimeter. Let's give it a look there. It's not, but the 10 is going to work. It's a 9 millimeter. So you're going to have to bear with me a second here. I don't use that 9 millimeter very much. I'm sure it's in the box here somewhere. I just have to find it. This is the 8, which I had on the other one. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one, you have a little bit of a problem with it, if you want to leave that question in the box at the comment section, I will try to answer that for you. All right, we've just broken the seal on that nut that's going to hold the free spool lever and the eccentric on the other side. I'm going to put that right back here because that's one of the first things I'm going to address. 4 screws hold the bridge on. You can see this 4 screws coming on this side. We're going to remove those. There is a spring holding an anti-reverse dog down in the corner. So I always work on these reels with my hand cupped so that when the bridge comes through, I capture the spring and it doesn't shoot off and get lost. I also recommend at this time 2 things. I recommend that you have a parts tray. Now my parts tray is organized chaos. I know where the pieces and parts are going because I put them in different corners of the tray. But if you're not that experienced, or if you prefer a little bit more of a rigid kind of a take apart and note where they came from kind of an approach, then I recommend you think about that before you start taking the pieces and parts off. I just got a reel into my shop. The fellow started doing that, went to put it back together again, and let's just say lost track of what was going on. The other thing I recommend is that you take pictures, because the pictures will give you the orientation and the sequence that you took parts off at various stages along the way. All right, my hand is cupped, so hopefully I catch that spring. The bridge is off. Let's remove the side plate. And, well, we're going to go hunting for that little spring. I trust that it's in here somewhere. And let's just check. Sometimes it's less successful than others, and sometimes, well, I just have to go to my box and get a replacement spring. This is the eccentric that we just removed. This is your yoke and your pinion gear. This is your jack. This is your anti-reverse dog. That usually gives us a little bit better look in terms of where that spring would be. And you know what? I'm not even sure that that spring was here because I didn't see it shoot out. Normally it would drop out. So maybe, just maybe, it wasn't here to begin with. Okay, well, we may discover it later, or not. That won't slow me down. All right, these are all of the internal pieces now. And what we mentioned is we got two jobs to do here. One is to replace the drag washers that are in here, and the other now is how to replace that eccentric. So I'm going to clean the eccentric base. There's a washer in the back here. I want to make sure that's nice and clean too. You take the opportunity to spin it, make sure that it's operating nicely. It is. And you can see, even though he's been maintaining the reel externally, the interior of the reel still has that dirt and debris on it. Alright, we're just going to put that off to the side for a moment. And I'll just check one more time. It's quite possible that that spring disappeared. It'll show up one day if it did make it onto my bench, and if it didn't, well, we'll just wonder about it. All right, here's your eccentric with the spring. It's a two pieces. This spring actually is a secondary part. It goes into the hole in the eccentric. When you go to load this, it belongs in the little groove here. And then you can load the eccentric into the hole in the side plate. Sometimes easier said than done. All right. Let's try this again. All right, so that's how it loads. And now you need to pull it up and out so that you can put tension on it. And make sure that it's set properly. All right, I want to grab that lever. You're probably going to have to reverse this because of the way that it's laying. Turn it so that you get a balance point now. You can see how it's balanced there. Then you can flip the lever over. That's the side plate bearing. Flip that lever over here. Put your trim ring on. It's a little bit easier to do it this way. Bring your lever back on. And put that nut back on. Alright, so that's how the spring should be seated. And my guess is when this was last serviced, it wasn't seated properly to begin with. Now we have it working properly. You can see how it's loaded now as opposed to floating over to the side, and you can see how it operates. This little stud here is going to be pushing the jack in and out, and that's what's going to result in free spool. All right, I got a little bit more cleaning up to do here. I use cotton swabs where possible to get all the old greases and dirts out. Cotton swab and paper towels, you want to go with the least abrasive approach in cleaning. Now some of them may need to get scrubbed. You may need a kitchen scrubby, or you may need steel wool or file, depending on how severe some of the damage is. But for the most part, start with the least abrasive and move your way up if you're not having any success and results. We've oiled that bearing already. We took a side trip just to see what it was like outside the reel. We put it back in. We want to clean the yoke on this. And you should be doing this because all these parts had to come out anyway in order to get to the drag washers. You might as well do it all rather than just go in and service the drag washers. check your pinion gear. If it's dirty, clean it out. One of the best ways to clean it out is just take a hard bristle brush, or in this case it's a brass brush. You can use a toothbrush, use a toothpick, anything. Just make sure you clean the valleys in between those gear teeth. Then use fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn precision reel grease to re-lubricate that pinion gear. Do it on the back side here. Now that's tarnished. It's not all dirt and debris on the yoke. Send the yoke over the slot in the pinion gear. Bring the pinion gear centered onto those two springs. Have the slot facing towards you. Press down. Take your jack. I like to put that in the up position. Take your jack, slide it over the stud in your eccentric. And if you need a little assist, the pliers generally will pull that in for you. Make sure that the stud is in the groove here, and now you've completed the top end of that. So now we're back to doing the work on the main gear, and I can see why Ron was having an issue with these drags, because, well, they're largely ineffective. They're stuck together, they're frozen in, and it's time to replace them. I'm going to use a utility knife here to free this up. Start walking these up and off, and yeah, these you can see, and I know Ron will be watching that, but this is just incredible in the meltdown of that one. These are the older kind of intermediary drag washers. So Penn used to use leather drags, and then they went to these for a little bit of time. And it's really a funky kind of thing. Well, in this case, this is the HT100, so you'll see what a new one looks like there. Completely worn off the back side of that. Okay, we're just going to keep walking these up one by one. And eventually we will get these off. Sometimes you can tap them off that way. There you go. These drag washers certainly were in need of replacement. Flip that up. Well, if I didn't mention it already, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, if you want to leave those questions in the comment section, I will try to answer those for you. There's a little slot where the eared washers go, so I used that slot to my advantage. I brought in a pick to pull these other ones out. And eventually this thing is going to come off, but it's just a little bit of work. I'm trying to figure out why this keeps getting stuck here. I think it's just all dirt. Gets up to a certain point and then it stops. Alright, there we go. And these little drag washers have been stuck down so much that they're actually acting as a vise, kind of wedging them back in. So it was clearly time that these washers got replaced. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. There we go. I think we're finally getting to this. So this is an example of what happens in heavy trolling, but it's also an example of why you should back off your drag washers when you're not fishing with them. Because what happens is they get pressed in here, and well, the star adjuster acts as a vise, pushing down on these, and generally speaking, it becomes problematic when you stop fishing because they're all pressed in. Alright, we got one more in there. Okay, just work it There we go. That's the last one. Main gear came off easy enough. One more piece to take off here, and that's going to be the gear sleeve. That has a pin holding it in. Most of the time you can push it through. This one's not being very cooperative, so use your little pick and a dead blow hammer to tap it through. And once you get that started that way, you can pull that out with the pliers. Like that. If you can, I like to leave it in there. The last piece I don't pull out, but if you've pulled it all out, don't worry, you just put it back through the hole. That's fine. And here's the bridge we need to clean up. So we've pretty much got to the point now where we can replace those worn drag washers. I'm going to start by putting some penetrating oil onto the bridge and using that hard brush to get rid of any of the accumulated dirt and debris that's on there. I'm going to follow that with 4-0 steel wool. That is a polishing steel wool. That's going to smooth all of this out. This is the side that's the business side of it. There's a back side of it here. You can make sure that it doesn't have any dirt and debris on there, but that doesn't touch anything. And we're going to assume that the washers from the other side of the reel are all gone. We're going to have to replace them. This one, well, I'd like to find a replacement for that. So we're going to shut the camera off for a moment, see if I have a replacement around. Well, we are in luck. I have a new replacement washer. You can see this one was rusted, completely pitted over, and that, of course, is totally ineffective. Let's see if we can put this back together now. I'm going to start by putting some grease onto the bridge post. We'll take our gear sleeve, put that on, put the pin back in, tap it down as much as you can. The pliers may be needed to pull it that extra little bit. Make sure that you clear this ridge with that stud, or you're going to have problems when you go to put the gear back on. Okay, got that. Here's your main gear. We're going to do the same thing here that we did with the pinion gear. We're going to pull a hard brush through there. I keep a paper towel underneath and I pull it so that the debris goes onto the towel, not onto my table. And we can, lube this up and put this back on. Still haven't found that spring, so I'm almost wondering, because of the way that the eccentric spring wasn't on properly, if we even had that spring. But we will see. Alright, that's all greased up. Let's bring the main gear back on. With the main gear seated now, we want to get the replacement washers. We have a 5 washer set. I'm going to give these back to Ron. And give him that old metal one as well. And our bag of washers. These are the HT100 washers. They are a hybrid washer that's a Carbon-Tex with a kind of a hardcore center here. These can run dry or they can run lubed. I'm going to lube these because of the way that he uses the reel. Alright, we want to get a little bit of grease on here. I'm using Cal's Universal Drag Grease for this. If you don't have that, don't run out and buy it. Use the Penn Reel Lubrication. There are 6 hard washers. We alternate. We bring the first one in is the keyed washer. That's the one we're replacing here. We'll do this again with the grease. Now we we want to bring our eared washer in. That's the one with the points that sits in the groove. You saw us using that groove before to pull out the washers. This is your third one, so it's rinse and repeat kind of a thing. That one goes in. Second of the rectangle centered washers. Push that stack down. Mixed washer up. Eared washer on top. One more. Bring that up. Again, we want to grease. You don't want to overload the grease, so you want to be able to see the cross hatching through the grease. Top washer here, cap washer. And this is an extra one that I brought out when I went and picked up the washer. I was unsure whether that one was a keyed washer or an eared washer, so that's why that one is on the table. Alright, still got to find myself a spring. Time to go to my convenient tray with the springs. Grab one of those. For the anti-reverse dog. And we're ready to set all of this back in. Okay, to set our gear assembly back in, we want to take the bridge, bring that in, rotate our bridge halfway. I didn't mention it on the way out, but there are two different types of bridge screws. There's a fully threaded and a partially threaded. Fully threaded goes underneath. The two partially threaded ones go through this springs that we had set earlier. Set your anti-reverse dog. That creates a cavity. Now we can grab that anti-reverse spring. When you have it set, it'll be sitting right in that little groove there. Rotate your bridge plate around. Take a screwdriver and take a turn or two on the screw just to set it, and then you want to come back and put the other 3 bridge screws back in. Again, the fully threaded ones go below, the partially threaded ones go above. Somehow I've accumulated an awful lot of tools on this one. I like to go in an X pattern, so we did the lower one, now we're going to go up top on the other side, come back to top on this side, go down below on the other side. Tighten them all up in the reverse order. And essentially you've completed the inner surface of this reel. We just need a few more things. We want to put the trim ring back on. Line up the trim ring that has the notch in it for your harness lug. And lay that down. Next up would be the spacer, the tension washer, and then the star adjuster. This one is a little tight, so I'm just going to hold tension on the inside to get this wheel started, and then it'll loosen right up. Be careful if you do this. Don't move the screwdriver around on the inside. That inside is threaded. Okay, I think we got it. We may have shifted a little bit in the pieces with the alignment of the screws, so let's go back and do that. One more step here is to put grease onto the shaft of the spool on this side. We did it on the other side. Let's go bring the assembly back in. Make sure that you've aligned your harness lug. I'm going to slip that in, but that's not the first screw I'm going to put back in, because that always seems to need a little more room. So let's pick one over here on this side. Right now you're holding all of the pressure on the case with your finger. You want to stop using that as quick as possible. So if we anchor one screw on one side, and we grab one on the other side here, we should be in a good position rather than trying to jockey around with the screws that are up top there on that harness lug. Well, if you're still with me, I want to encourage you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed any before. If you have subscribed, thank you. And if you watch these frequently, I appreciate your loyalty to the channel and your viewing. And I ask everybody to please like the videos. That does help in the ranking of the videos on YouTube, and it does help us as a channel get more exposure to other folks who may benefit from this type of service. The whole idea here is to keep fishing reels running and to transfer skills. So I don't mind sharing what I know with you, and hopefully you'll be able to use that to service your fishing reels and keep them going for a long time to come. Okay, we're almost done here. As I mentioned, we have 7 screws, so that's a lot of cranking around here. Now we have 8 screws. There you go. I miscounted. 2 more. Then we'll go back and tighten them all up. I've snugged them up. Haven't tightened them. We'll do that in a moment. We'll get that handle on there, give it a test. So it's pretty obvious to see why Ron was running into trouble with his drags. And, well, we showed you how to not only replace the drag washers, but how to service the reel, since, well, the whole reel has got to come apart to do those drag washers. We showed you critical places where lubrication is required. I did recommend oil for the bearings, not grease. Grease is going to slow the performance down. It's also going to impact performance as it takes on dirt and debris. These are not sealed reels by any stretch of the imagination. So doing that will keep the reels running as best you can with oil as opposed to grease. I can bring the handle back in now. The handle screw. Start these by hand. You don't want to strip. You don't want to put a wrench in there right now. So you want to move this down the pike as much as you can. Now this little screw says oil on it, and it's appropriate between services to use an oiler like this with that little spring bearing there to go in and oil, but we had that apart. We took that apart and we applied grease to it, so there's no need to put oil in it at the moment. Tighten this down. That wasn't tightened down before. Don't know why, but it wasn't. Put our set screw back in. And normally I would say if I didn't see any parts on the benches or the tables, then this reel is completed, but I do see parts on the table, but that's understandable. Those are the replaced parts. Okay, let's just adjust the non-gear side bearing. Let's give it a test. We're in free spool. How does it spool? It spools nicely. Remember, we got some stuff hanging around in here, right? We've got that little zip tag and other things. Unfortunately, that's not attached. Let's go into gear. I would say that's quite a difference there from what Ron had, particularly as well we go and take a look at these washers in the various stages of being stuck and jammed into the main gear. There's no question as to why he had sporadic performance with the reel. They were all kind of jammed up and broken down. All right, I hope you've enjoyed that. Before I leave, I do want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, and rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I want to thank you, the viewers, for making the channel what it is, for staying with me this long on this service, and, well, just overall for the contributions you've made over time to helping this channel grow and to help this channel evolve into, well, what it is today, and hopefully will even improve in the future so that we can get even better at this. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.